Growing tomatoes may be what made me fall in love with gardening. If I could write a love letter to tomatoes, I would. Actually, let me just... There's nothing like the taste of fresh homegrown tomatoes. You can grow so many varieties, my favorite being sun gold. They're so versatile and are in abundance all summer long. While we eat tomatoes raw in salads or sliced in burgers and sandwiches, my favorite way to cook tomatoes in the summertime is to make our own tomato sauce for pasta. In a large saucepan, I add olive oil and lots of chopped garlic. Once the garlic is nice and fragrant, I add in my cherry tomatoes. Then I season with my heart. The tomatoes will start to break down, and I continue cooking them until the sauce starts to thicken. Top with grated Parmesan cheese and chopped basil. I didn't have any basil in my garden for my first batch of pasta this season, but I definitely planted some from the grocery store and had basil growing for the rest of summer. This pasta is so simple, yet so delicious and bursting with flavor. I also had this other cherry tomato variety that looked so rough when I initially planted it that I was worried it would affect the other tomatoes in the same bed. So what I ended up doing was moving it into a smaller container. It actually produced really well in there, and this variety had such a good bite to it and was perfect in salads or snacking on raw. I also grew some early girl tomatoes. I like these because they're still relatively small and manageable in my garden. When there are more fresh tomatoes than we can eat, I slice and freeze these for later. These frozen tomatoes are perfect for chilies and stews, my favorite being my husband's Cineon. This year, I actually trimmed all of my plants down once the tomato plants started to look rough, instead of removing them for the season, and I was so surprised I basically got a second harvest out of everything. I didn't even film how they looked trimmed down, since I wasn't sure anything would actually grow back. This led to more batches of fresh tomato sauce with fresh basil this time, and since tomatoes and basil were in abundance, we also made some bruschetta. Recently, we experienced a heat wave where it got to 107 degrees. I neglected the garden a bit to stay out of the heat and noticed that some animals or bugs got to some of our tomatoes before I could. While I was a bit sad we couldn't get to them in time, I'd like to think our plant gave this little lizard some much needed food and shade in the heat. It's bittersweet saying goodbye to tomatoes this season, but every season I learn something new as I watch them grow. This year, I planted marigolds and nasturtium nearby since I read these are great companion plants. I also made sure to harvest some seeds so I can do this again next year. I am so thankful for how much these tomato plants have given us. Thanks for taking some time to hang out with me in our garden. We'll talk again soon.